Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, both classic and new comics we want to read, and everything else in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Planes, Trains, and Comic Books. Today, we are still diving into the Ultimate Universe of Marvel, and we read Ultimate Spider-Man for this week. And, you know, everybody knows that listens to this podcast probably that I'm not a big Spider-Man fan, so this was interesting for me. But yeah, John, had you read the Ultimate Spider-Man line before?
No, for some reason, even though I love Spider-Man, this is one I did not pick up the solo when I was reading the Ultimates line, because I read Ultimates, I read Ultimate Fantastic Four for sure, but I didn't do X-Men or Spider-Man. So no,
Okay.
this was I only got when he was made appearances in other ones. So
Yeah. Well, this was a big one. I know it probably got under ordered. I don't know if this was like one of the first ones. Like I think this is before Ultimates, or maybe it came out around the same time. But this one, if you could find the single issue, like the first issue, is fairly rare. I think
wow.
I think that's because this was like the first one, because no one knew what this Ultimate line was, and they were like, we're gonna order it, but we're not gonna like super order it. And then it was like sell out instantly, and then everybody loves it. So when I worked at the comic book store, no one would shut the fuck up about this title. So and I had read this before. Like I read like the first 2 or 3 volumes of this.
Okay.
At the time in the mid 2000s, I did not give a fuck about it. So that's why it was interesting to read it again now after many, many years. And I enjoyed it quite a bit more than I did the first time. So that's good.
Nice.
Also, if you hear any noise in the background, my neighbor just decided to start mowing his lawn. So apologize for that, but hopefully it's not too loud. But yeah, and this book is written by the other big writer from this time period, Brian Michael Bendis. I don't know if you've read any of his stuff. I know you have read one thing, which is Torso. He did that. But had you read? Do you know if you've read any of his other stuff before?
I feel like I have. I feel like I like because he did like a lot of he was on some of the other big story points around this time too, right? Like, didn't he do like Dark Avengers and?
I don't know if he wrote Dark Avengers. He wrote Mighty Avengers. He wrote New Avengers. He wrote Secret Invasion, I believe was him.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. I guess Secret Invasion. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then, I mean, his biggest thing for me was Daredevil. He wrote the late 90s, 2000s Daredevil after Kevin Smith, which is a really, really good title, at least from what I remember. I haven't read it for 20 years, but I remember liking that one a lot. And for a while there, it was like, he can write anything and I'll read it. One of my favorite things is his indie book, Powers. He did that comic. I don't know if you've read or seen that before.
Yeah, I've heard of Powers. I've seen some of the stuff.
And I loved that book. That book was fantastic. So he got a little bit into himself. I believe he created Jessica Jones as well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he created Jessica Jones.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I think she was in, what was the name of that book? It was a Max series he wrote that was her first appearance. So, Alias. That's the name of her title. Yeah, and he was the creator and writer of that book. Because she's Alias Investigations, right? So,
yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, and that was like a big Max title. So I liked that book a lot. I liked him as a writer a lot. I haven't liked much of his newer stuff, but
Well, did he also help create Miles Morales?
He did create Miles Morales. I mean, him,
Yeah, okay.
the artist, yeah.
Okay. So that was that's probably his biggest.
They did a reboot of Ultimate Spider-Man. I don't remember when, but this was just called. It was called Ultimate Spider-Man, and I can't remember what the actual title was called. It was a little bit different when they rebooted it. But yeah, he created Miles Morales as well.
Well, Ultimate Comics Spider-Man.
Something like that.
Gotcha.
Something like that. I'm not 100%, but once again, I wasn't reading it. So, and then the artist on this series for a long time, I can't remember how many issues he did, but he did a lot of them, was Mark Bagley, who is very well known for being one of the fastest artists of all time, and a good fast artist. Like, he gets it done, and he gets it done on time, and it looks fairly fucking awesome. So I don't know about you, but I thought the art was pretty great, even though it is dated with what people are wearing.
No, definitely. That's one of the first things they talked about is that Spider-Man has that like 2000s, like you call it the Trunks haircut, but it's that, it's in like every main character.
Every guy
Scream.
character has the divide down the middle, and it goes over on both sides. The semi-long hair. Yeah.
And so so it was very much like, oh, okay, I definitely know when this is set.
Yes.
But no, besides that, no, the costume looks great. He definitely feels like slender and young, like a teen. They do a really good job of that in this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he doesn't look like a 30-year-old pretending to be.
No, that's half the time when Spider-Man's drawn. Like, I get that, it gives him his powers, and his body becomes all like super buff. But yeah, sometimes in the suit he looks way bulkier than like a kid would be still.
Yeah. And this, he's fairly, like, when he puts a suit on, you can tell it is a young kid in that suit, or a younger man in that suit. So yeah, well, right away, first page of this comic, it starts off changing the mythology of how the spider got his powers and all that stuff. So I'm trying to remember what lab he was in the original one, but I don't think it was Osborn's lab.
No, I don't think it was Oscorp.
Yeah, Oscorp had not been created in the first original, Steve Ditko, Stan Lee Spider-Man. Like, he was a while in, I think, a little whiles in before he got created. So yeah, right away it's different because Oscorp is the one creating the spider, and like basically his assistant like drops the spider in a container and doesn't close the lid, and that is how the spider gets out.
Of course.
Yeah, and then we cut to Peter Parker, and it's standard. He's a nerd in high school. Like you said, he's got the 90s quintessential male haircut with the divide down the center, and like a waterfall on each side of his head.
Yeah, it's like Atlantis, like I said, Scream, like everybody has this haircut during this time.
Yes. And we're really seeing, the kids in high school, the dynamic with Flash Thompson being his bully. There's a kid named Kong who looks like he's 45, and he is also, a bully to Peter Parker. And we see MJ thrown in here right away. Like, MJ was not in the original Spider-Man, so that's an interesting add. I'm trying to remember when she was added. I think it was after that was like the first issue that John Romita Jr. drew. So it was like issue 50 or something, or 100, or one of those kind of longer, way down the line. Because I remember John Romita Jr. was the one who drew the famous line where she says, "Face it, Tiger, you've hit the big time," or whatever that was.
Yeah, you hit the jackpot.
Yeah, you hit the jackpot. There you go. Once again, not a Spider-Man canon fan or whatever. So I don't know a lot about Spider-Man other than what everybody knows about Spider-Man, right? And this was interesting reading this because it's like they're taking the movies that had just come out, because this was right around the time the Sam Raimi movies had come out. And you were saying like a lot of the stuff from the Garfield movies is taken from this, or it feels like that.
Yeah, it feels like this because, like, I mean, so as we get into it, like his parents in the Sam Raimi films, like I don't even remember if they ever say what happened to him, but his parents just aren't there. But specifically in this comic and in the Andrew Garfield films, it says his parents died in a like plane crash, and his dad was a scientist. So that's part of like him, like I guess coming from smart folk. And then he also his dad was like developing things, and that's kind of like Peter finishing his work is like those things help him like in his Spider-Man day-to-day stuff.
So. Right. Yeah, so it's kind of like a good mix of like new and old. I will say, the thing that dates this the most is the fact that, one, the way they talk, it's a little bit, it definitely brought me back to high school. I was like, oh yeah, we all used to say that. And then and then the other thing is the way everybody dresses. There's a lot of 90s clothing, we'll say. There's some Jinko jeans make appearance in this for sure.
Oh yeah, lots of like t-shirts and then like a button-down shirt like just hanging out over that.
Over it. Yeah, I was waiting for the like short sleeve button down over a long sleeve shirt underneath it. That was a big look in Hawaii when I lived there. So but yeah, so it's the we're getting all the hits, right? We're getting the like, oh, this is how we see the Spider, we see him as a nerd in high school, we see Uncle Ben, and Uncle Ben looks like the cool hippie from the 60s or whatever, but now he's an old man. That's kind of how they make him look. He's got a ponytail, for sure. But even he's wearing like a hoodie, a cool hoodie. So but yeah, they're definitely like hitting they're like cramming in all the important things like Mary Jane and stuff earlier. And then they're like hitting all the things you want to hit for Spider-Man's origin, right? Because this is just a retelling of his origin. And this was like unique because until this point, there had only been one other Spider-Man reboot, or not even reboot, but like a new title, right? They had Spider-Man by Todd McFarlane launched in the early 90s because when Todd McFarlane was on The Amazing Spider-Man, it did so well. They're like, we're going to give you your own Spider-Man. So that was its own title. And then Spider-Man got so popular from all that stuff that they even had like the Spectacular Spider-Man and Web of Spider-Man and all that. So there was like 4 books going on, but this was the first one that like rebooted it, I believe. I think maybe I didn't read the McFarlane one. Maybe that actually does reboot, like start over from the beginning. But even if it does, this was the one that like was good, we'll say, because the McFarlane one I think was only really cared about for the art. I don't think anyone was reading that for like the amazing story that Todd McFarlane had to tell. So yeah, this was actually like, okay, we're gonna like try to really give it the old college try to reboot this thing correctly and have like new readers jump on from the beginning. So we got to tell the origin. So this is like their attempt to make it different enough, but also familiar enough, so people won't be mad. I'm assuming is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, we get the day-to-day Parker being a nerd in school, sucking at sports. Flash Thompson is kicking ass at sports. We get to see the daily dynamic between Aunt May and Uncle Ben and Peter when he gets home. And yeah, I mean, we just get that. We see that he's in his house, like in his little laboratory room after he goes to bed, and he's working on this equation that his dad has, died before he could finish. And so it's like him trying to connect with his dad and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's for some kind of like polymer or something like, what is it? What could this be?
Yeah, he just hasn't figured out how to solve it yet. But it's some kind of cool new polymer like substance that might be helpful later on, potentially. Hint, 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 wink, wink. Yeah, and like that's pretty much the first episode is all that, or the first issue is all that, until we get to the big moment that everybody knows is going to happen, where a spider bites Peter Parker while his school goes on a field trip to Oscorp to like look at the lab, and it's that spider that his assistant didn't close the lid on, and it is squished immediately, so no more spider to hurt anybody else or give powers to anybody else. But I was trying to remember, it's been a long time since I read the original Spider-Man stuff by Stan Lee. Does he get sick, like deathly ill right away? Or is it just like he goes to sleep and then comes home, and then when he wakes up, it's like, oh, I'm stronger and shit? Because
I think he gets sick. I feel like I recall that.
Okay, this lingers on him getting sick a bit more. I think it builds a little bit more tension, especially if you've never read it. I mean, I would assume by now, because this came out after the movies, the Sam Raimi movies, that it would be known, like it would be in the zeitgeist already. So, but yeah, I think it would still be new enough or different enough than the movie. But right away, he gets kind of sick. He feels faint, all that stuff. Oscorp does take a sample of his blood, and they find out like, oh, he's gonna fucking die. Like his blood is deteriorating. Something's wrong with this thing. It's he's probably gonna die from it. And Oz right away, Osborn is not very. He's the bad guy. We already know this, like from the movies and shit. But like, there is no questioning how he was before. Like in the movie, he didn't seem like a bad guy until he got the crazy juice or whatever, and then it turns him crazy. He just seems like a businessman who could be good or bad depending on what he's trying to do with his company. But in this, he is definitely from the start like evil businessman who's like, I don't give a fuck if someone dies from this. We're still going to give human trials a try later on and stuff. Like that was just one thing. Who knows what happened? So they think Peter's going to die, but then when Peter wakes up the next day and he goes to school, he's feeling much better. He gets bullied like normal, except this time when they try to attack him physically, he's able to throw one of them on their face on the ground, and he can like pick him up, and he's like, what the hell? And then he falls faint again like right after that. So it seems like something's going on where he's getting better, and then his body's like reacting to the spider bite, so he's getting worse and then better. So it's going back and forth until eventually he don't need or he doesn't get bad at all. It's all good now, right? He's got his powers, and they're manifesting fully. He even gets his spider sense when Oscorp tries to kill him.
Yeah, he sends like an assassin after him. I do like that he's in the hospital and the doctor's like, you sure you don't have anything going on? You haven't been smoking marijuana?
Yeah. Oh, that was funny. Yeah. Now you have to tell me, were you smoking the marijuana? Like, it was very funny. They go all out in that marijuana stuff, but it was funny because it's just so early on in the 2000s. I guess it was still like a super big deal. But I mean, it's weird to think that's like over 20 years ago now. But we've made a lot of headway in the marijuana debate in America. So. But yeah, anyway, Osborn sends an assassin to kill him so that no one looks into, because everybody saw him get bit, right? So like if he drops dead, they'll be like, oh, it was because of this, and he's like, oh, we'll get sued. So he sends an assassin to kill him, but his spider sense kicks in right as this car tries to run him over, and he's able to jump over it. And then he gets a sense when he runs over to the guy. He actually runs over to the guy going, hey, are you okay in the car that just tried to murder me? And then as he's about to approach the window, he gets another sense that he should not approach the window because the guy's pulling out a gun, and he runs away before the guy can shoot him. So the assassin tells Osborn what happened. And unlike the other Spider-Man movies, and I'm assuming the comics, Osborn immediately is like, this Parker has gotten powers from this shit. Like he knows something's up with Parker.
Yeah, well, also the assassin grabs like a vial of blood from the hospital so they can like, I guess, check it, since because they got they checked on when he first got bit because he was there already, but then I guess now because now he's he hasn't died yet, and so they grab that vial at the hospital, and they check and they're like, whoa, his cells are actually better. They're even like
stronger
better than he was.
Yeah, better than better.
It's like he's like the best athlete ever.
Yeah. So, but it's very clear that like he is aware that Parker is going through a change, and his assassin told him that he jumped over his car. So he's like, we're going to keep an eye on this Parker. But obviously, later on when Parker becomes Spider-Man, it's pretty apparent. I mean, like, there's no question. Yeah, he knows it's Parker, which is kind of interesting. That's like an interesting dynamic where before it was always like, what if he discovers that Parker is Spider-Man, then Aunt May will be in trouble or whatever. So that's like the twist. One of the twists that they change in this is right away. Green Goblin knows, or Osborn knows, that Peter Parker is at first just a kid with these abilities. It seems his serum has done something, and then as the Spider-Man comes around, he's like, oh, it's it's Peter, obviously.
Mm.
So, yeah. And then we also see, Peter Parker he's a teenager, right? He's got hormones and shit. He's freaking out every now and then. We see that maybe his new abilities have given him a bit of an attitude. I don't know if it could be psychological, like, oh, now he's got power and shit, and he's seeing like, I'm not a fucking loser like I thought I was. Or maybe it's actually changing him mentally as well. But he starts arguing with Uncle Ben and Aunt May, very uncharacteristic, because they kind of are like, what the hell? When he's like, I'm leaving, I'm doing whatever I want, get out of my room, stay out of my life, you're not my parents, like that whole thing. But and then it's like he goes up to his room to like lock them out, and it's like reading a science book. All right, he's totally a rebel. But then he goes, like, once he's in his room, he's like, hey, he can't sleep. So he tries out his hand sticking to stuff that he's been noticing, and he climbs up the wall for the first time, and he's on the ceiling. So yeah, he's doing the Tobey Maguire finding out his powers thing. Yeah, I mean through the rest of the kind of early issues of this book is just him in school finding out about his powers. Now he's good at basketball. He actually like is getting more aggressive towards Flash Thompson, like actively. He throws a basketball at Flash Thompson and tries to impress Mary Jane. And then he gets in a fight after that because Flash Thompson's like, meet me at the outside the school at this time at 3:00 or whatever, and we're gonna fight this out. And so Peter doesn't want to fight, he says, but he joins it and he dodges everything. So every time Flash Thompson takes a swing, Peter's just dodging, not throwing punches back. But then he does a thing where he tries to like catch Flash Thompson's hand in his hand, and when Flash Thompson punches his hand, it breaks Flash's hand. So it ends up being a pretty serious injury because it says he broke like a shit ton of bones in his hand and stuff. And it was like $2,500 in medical bills back then, so I assume that was a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
And they were going to try to sue, like Flash's family was going to try to sue Uncle Ben and Aunt May if they don't pay up the $2,500. So there's this whole thing, with that. Even like because that word got around from Harry Osborn going home and his friend being like, you should have seen Parker at the fight. His dad is like listening in the background and is like, yes, excellent. Like my plan is coming together. And so, then we see Peter Parker and once again being rebellious to his, Uncle Ben and Aunt May be over this whole fight thing because they're like, how are we gonna, like, we taught you better than that, Peter. Like, you should know better not to fight. And he's like, I wasn't fighting. I was dodging. And this fucking, like, I'm standing up for myself for once. And I can't help it if this idiot broke his hand on my hand. But they don't know he's got powers. So they're like, we taught you better than that, Peter. So Peter goes upstairs and then he hears like them say like, how the hell are we going to pay $2,500? We don't have that. And, I don't know if that's what spurs this little montage we get, but we get him doing a training session late at night. He sneaks out of his room and he goes to like an abandoned warehouse and he puts on like an all black suit and he just starts, doing gymnastics, lifting old cars that are in this warehouse, all this kind of stuff. So we can see he's got his powers down, or at least enough, like he's confident in them. He knows what he can do. And so, what happens then? Oh yeah, they invite, don't they invite, like Osborn tells his son Harry, like, hey, why don't you invite your friend Parker to come to my lab? I think he likes science, right? And so there's this whole thing where he's like, yeah, why don't you come look at the lab? And,
they don't want to, they don't want to get, just in case sued, but they also want to get him there so they can like maybe do some more tests and, he'll be cool about it.
Yeah. And we meet Dr. Octavius here because he's working for Osborn in this lab, which is very interesting. Obviously foreshadowing. And this was like obviously way earlier than his first appearance too, I'm assuming. In like the old comics, right? So they're kind of putting in all these little hints of villains to come, right? In this first little story arc. So while Peter is at Oscorp, they take his blood without him saying yes. And when they test it, they see like, oh yeah, it definitely has a lot of like it's just super strong. Obviously, the spider blood has made him like everything's stabilized. He is at an Olympic level for an athlete. Like that's what his blood and everything look like. And but everything's stabilized, so there's no hint of like any bad stuff in there now. And so this gives Osborn an idea where he's like, wait a second, I think I would be able to like inject myself possibly, but let's see how the accident happened, right? So they review the footage of the spider biting Peter's hand, and he's like, well, that was just with spider blood. Like, what if I put in my own like DNA with this instead of spider DNA and I give it to myself? Wouldn't that just like give me like an awesome version of myself or some shit, like a more muscular? I assume it's just him wanting to be like optimized for himself. Yeah. So, so that's going on in the background with Osborn, like experimenting on himself, basically. And then we get the wrestling component of the Spider-Man origin, which, I mean, this is in every iteration of it, right?
Yeah, definitely. He's pretty much always, go doing the wrestling at some point.
Yeah, because like he needs to get money for. He feels bad. He cost his aunt and uncle a bunch of money for breaking Flash Thompson's hand, so he's got to figure out a way to get some money. And it just so happens, I guess, at their school, some wrestlers come to do a show, and this guy named Crusher Hogan starts challenging people. And when one of the kids, who's named Kong, he's the guy that looks like he's 40. He's the bully of Peter.
He looks like he could be Kingpin's like kid or something.
Yeah, there you go. Oh man, that would be an interesting. Maybe later on they do that. Kong, what are you doing? Like, I'm sorry, Dad. Yeah, but anyway, Kong, tries to challenge this guy, but it turns out, I guess it's at a mall. Is that where this is? It's not at the school. I thought it was at the school because it has all these kids from school there.
No, I think it's at the local mall.
It's the mall, and they're doing a show to attract people to the show on the Tuesday night, following. And so they're like, anybody who wants to challenge, not Crusher Hogan. I was gonna say Bone Crusher. Crusher Hogan, come on, take your shot. You get $500. And Kong tries to go up there, but he's like, oh, you can't fight him because you got to be over 21. And this gives Peter an idea. So Peter goes to get dressed up. He puts a mask on in his house, puts on a sweatshirt and all this stuff. Like, the normal first iteration of the Spider-Man costume. And he challenges the guy. And because, they don't know his face, they can't see him. They're like, oh yeah, you're over 21 probably. So yeah, go for it. And he beats Hogan immediately. He just throws him on the ground, picks him up, throws him down. And he gets the money, and then he leaves quickly. And then I think the guy says like, hey, if you want to make some more money, come back at this day or whatever. Because Peter will not reveal any of his information. That's the other thing. Then
he won't like write down or give away his information, so he can't be traced back or anything.
Yeah. Then like at school, we see Peter is talking to Mary Jane. He's more confident now that he's not scared for his life or whatever. And then the coach comes up to him and says like, hey, we got Flash out, and I heard you got some new moves. Like, you want to try out for this position on the basketball team? And so Peter Parker does that, and he fucking kills it. He scores like 114 points or whatever in the first game. And he's doing like full dunks and everything. So he is the new, it's like Teen Wolf.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, this is basically Teen Wolf.
This does a really good job of like showing his like, I'm a nerdy teen, like I get picked on, and then like how his life is changing, going to becoming, not even Spider-Man yet, but like just how the powers are affecting his like day-to-day life. I really like that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a slower build, but like a different kind of slower build where you care about this changing. Like, he's getting more of an attitude, but in a good and bad way, because he's being more pushed back with his aunt and uncle, but he's also pushing back on his bullies. And then he's more confident when he talks to Mary Jane. And later on, when there's a party, he's more confident when he's talking to other girls. So like, yeah, it's just like it's like there's like a push and pull. Not everything's good, but not everything's bad. With these newfound powers and this new attitude that he's come out with. So, then we see he goes to the next wrestling night and he kicks Crusher's ass again, and he just keeps getting paid more and more. And this is definitely a change from the original, but because his costume looks ridiculous compared to like the other wrestlers, when he gets paid this night, the guy's like, here's a duffel bag, wear this next time, you look terrible in this stupid fucking sweatsuit you have on. And so it turns out he gives him his actual Spider-Man costume. So this is how he gets the Spider-Man costume in this one is, the guy from the wrestling place gives it to him, saying like, you look ridiculous in the other one, here's some spandex. Which makes sense, right? Because they're going to be working around people that wear spandex all the time. And they know what works for like a villain or whatever, So
Yeah, and it's good because this is like it's basically like you would get in wrestling too. It's very base. It's just red and black colors, and then it has because
I think it's red and blue.
Or red and blue. Sorry, I said black because of the shading. That's my bad. It's red and blue, but very like that's it. Doesn't have any of the like webbing or spider or anything in that on it. And then it's just like the eyes. They're very his first mask had like the little kind of like lucha-esque but bigger eyes, and so this one it's the same kind of thing. They just made it a little bigger. So it's definitely like if you didn't know this was like Spider-Man outfit in general, like us as a reader, you could be like, oh yeah, that totally looks like what I would think a wrestling outfit would look like too.
Yes, of course. I mean, we all know this is Spider-Man, so it's a reveal, but it's interesting that it makes sense that's where he would get the material for this costume. From like a wrestling guy who's like, I got this made for you because you need to look like a real wrestler if you're going to be working for us. So, he does add later on like webs and stuff. But then we cut to Osborn, who's now testing. He's been developing this new serum that's based on what happened to Parker, for himself. So he's going to be like his first real approved test subject. So he's got this test happening. And then, they push the button on the machine, and then we cut to black. And then the next page we see the whole lab is destroyed. People are dead. I think the only people there's a lot of scientists that are dead, but luckily Otto, what's his name? Otto Octavius is not dead, of course, because he becomes Doc Ock later. But I'm wondering if this is how he gets like paralyzed or something, or why he needs to have. I know he's not paralyzed in the show, but in the comic, but like they could do something like that. Why he needs the arms or some shit, I don't know how they set it up, but they could change it to something where this is what caused that. So it's like it's tying it more closely to Peter's origin, and also the other main bad guy, Green Goblin's origin. So also Harry Osborn was close by, but he did not die, so that's good. But Osborn is missing. Norman is gone AWOL. They can't find him in the wreckage. They think maybe he's dead. And of course, this is being reported everywhere that, there was an explosion at Oscorp. What's going to happen? What happened to everybody? So, in the meantime, we see Spider-Man is now in his new costume. He's killing the wrestling game. Everybody likes him. He also comes up with his name, just like in the movie with Bruce Campbell, where he's like, "What's your name?" And he's like, "I don't know." And he's like, "The Spider." And he's like, "The Amazing Spider-Man." So just like that. And
that name sucks.
Yes. And then we get like a different turn on the on what happens in the original comic. So everybody knows, or should know, that in the original comic, when he goes to get his money on one of these wrestling nights, the guy stiffs him, and then later on, we see a robber come into the room and rob the money that he was supposed to get. Spider-Man was, and so in order to pay back the guy who stiffed him, Peter Parker just lets the robber run by, and he's like, "No skin off my back." That guy, got robbed. Fuck him. But that is not what happens in this. When Peter comes out, or after the match, he comes into the office And the guy's like, hey, where's my money? And he's like, what do you mean? And the guy's like, you stole my money. Like, you're the only one who knew it was in here that I don't trust. Everybody else knows, but they're at least guys I've worked with or people I've worked with. So, like, it's got to be you. And he gets surrounded by all the other wrestlers because he's stolen the entire payroll, I'm assuming. And yeah, like, he escapes, but there's no robber. This threw me, actually. I was like, oh, what happens? Like, how does Uncle Ben get shot? You know, like, what happened?
Yeah, I was wondering it first too. I was like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, if there's no robber, then, and I thought maybe, okay, later on there'll be a robber and it's someone who robbed the place and then he'll just run into him. But no, this was all just like keeping it tied in with the original story, but not. It's just one of those changes where they're like, we're going to change it up, change your expectations. So he runs away, and then as he's fleeing that place, he runs into, like, he changes back into Peter Parker, and then he's walking down the street, and then we see a robbery happen from like some local bodega, and this guy steals the purse, right? Or like just money. I don't know.
He robbed the bodega itself.
Is it actually the bodega? Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if he took the lady's purse or something too, because he knocks you down. It does look like he might have the purse too.
Yeah, but this guy robs the bodega. Peter Parker just lets him go by. And the guy's like, why didn't you just stick your leg out and trip him? And Peter's like, I don't know. Like, I didn't think about it. And I got my own problems, dude. Like, it's not my job to fucking stop everybody from everything. And, of course, the bodega owners are very angry about that. But he does get a good look at this guy. We get to see his face very clearly. He's got a backwards baseball cap, so you know he's trouble.
And a little goatee.
Yeah, this guy looks like he's 45, maybe something like that. I don't know. He looks pretty old. But he's on the run. He gets away. Then we see another fight between Peter and Ben because he's getting bad grades when he comes home. His report card was there, so they argue again. And Peter runs out and is like, no, screw you guys. Like,
you're not my real dad.
Yeah, basically he says that shit. I don't know what my parents would have thought because they're fucking dead. And then he runs away. So he goes through this whole like crisis. And then he's like, I can't stay at my house tonight because I'm so like upset. I can't stay with anybody else that he can think of. Like Mary Jane, they'll just call my parent, or they'll call Ben, and I don't want that. So he decides he's gonna go to his old friend Kong, who's his new friend Kong, I should say, because Kong is a team member on the basketball team. So even though he was bullied before by Kong. Kong just gets the doorbell. He answers it. He's like, hey, Parker, you're on the team. So, yeah, of course you can stay in my house. So it's like, he's not a bad guy. I mean, obviously he's a bully, but they're very sympathetic, I thought, in this. The bullies it's not like they hated him because they hated him. It's like the politics of high school meant that they had to hate him,
Because he's cool now and can do cool things.
It's fine to like
him. Still, no.
I mean, it's not good. I'm just saying, like, it's not like they're bad people. It's more like this is just what high school is like. And, like, these are the rules of high school. If you're a nerd, I'm supposed to pick on you. But now you're not a nerd, so we're cool. We're best friends.
How dare you, sir?
What? I didn't write the rules. That's what it is. So while he's there, of course, Kong throws a party. And this is where we see, ladies are now interested in Parker because, he's kicking ass on the basketball team. And they are liking what they're seeing. They also showed a shot of him, like, way more muscular than before, too. So, like, obviously he's got a better body than before, which has an effect on the ladies. I don't know who this woman is or this girl is that's hitting on him. She looks like she's in her 20s, but I think she's supposed to be in high school. But who knows? But then Mary Jane comes in and sees he's being a gentleman about it. He's like, no, I can't, I don't want you, like, thank you, but no. And then she like goes in to like kiss him and she kind of falls on him and then he's pushing her away. And as he's pushing her away, Mary Jane sees this and she thinks that they're making out. So it's like a misunderstanding. He runs after her. And then as he's running out of the door after her, all of a sudden he runs into Uncle Ben. And Uncle Ben's like, I can't believe you're partying. I never thought you would be a partier, Parker. Your dad, what would your dad think? I don't know. He's very like, how dare you? He's not even, Peter's not even drinking. He's not even doing anything wrong, technically. Like, if I went to a party, it would be like this. I'd be like standing in the corner, not drinking anything. This is in high school, not drinking anything, feeling awkward. And then if my parents showed up, they'd be like, oh, you're not drinking? Okay, well, let's go home. And these are stupid. So, and I'd be like, yeah, you're right. But yeah, this is where we get the fantastic change of the, great power is great responsibility saying, right? Because Uncle Ben never says those words in succession. He never says great power. If you have great power, that means great responsibility, or whatever the fucking original saying is. Do you remember what the original saying is? I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility.
Thank you. I couldn't think of it off the top of my head. But anyway, so he never says those words. He says the words, great things you can do. If you're able to do great things, then that will come with a greater responsibility, and you should understand that. And you have the ability to do great things, but you also have a responsibility to the things to people and stuff around you. And you need to understand that. And so Peter gets it. Peter hears it. But then, Uncle Ben says something about his father, and he's like, my father, if he knew so much, then where the fuck is he? And then runs away because it was like there was a moment where he was reaching Peter, and then Peter pushes away, and then Ben's like, I wish you could snap out of it, Peter. Like, come on, you can do it, buddy. Like, as Peter runs away. So then in the background of that, we're seeing this creature running around New York City, smashing shit and looking for Parker. That's what he says. He says, Parker, as he runs around. And this dude looks like a demon, at least his face. He's like a bulked up human body with a demon face that is green.
When I first saw him, I honestly at first I was like, "Is this Abomination?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. This has got to be Green Goblin or something." Yes. I don't know what this is.
Wow, John, you didn't put it together just because he looked that different?
Yeah, I didn't at first. Okay. I was like, "Who is this?"
I mean, they set it up very well, right? Like, oh, his body's missing, and there was an experiment.
For sure, I just didn't expect it to be.
John's a little slow. That's what.
No, I just didn't expect it right away that he would be. That he would look like this. Hey, we'll get more into it when he
anyway
fully appears.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a little cameo. He's always in shadow, at least initially in these ones, but then Peter, he runs away. Of course it's stormy and raining and everything. It's all dramatic, and he goes to the top of a building, which is a horrible place to go in the middle of a lightning storm. And he's talking about how he's a freak and everything, and then he's like, you know what? I got to tell Uncle Ben and May. Like, they deserve to know, and they'll love me no matter what. So he goes home, and when he goes home, all of a sudden, he sees police cars. And it turns out that while he was out of the house, some robber came in and shot Uncle Ben because he was trying to rob them. And then we find out that guy was, in fact, the dude that Peter let run by that was robbing the bodega. So that is the same, but it doesn't happen in the same way. Obviously, that guy went into their house this time instead of on the street.
The guy stepping up his crime, apparently.
And so, also, we get Harry Osborn sleeping in his bedroom that same night, and he hears a loud noise. He hears a scream. His mom yelling, Harry. And when he runs out, he sees her bedroom is engulfed in flames. She's burned alive. We even see her hand sticking out of the fucking ruins of this house that he runs out of that's collapses under the flames. And so, his mom's dead. And then he sees running out of that, or he sees outside of the house is the Green Goblin, or this demon fellow that can apparently generate actual fire out of his hands. It's not like bombs or whatever. It is like some sort of power that he's manifested. And then he blows up the rest of the house and flies away. So Harry is left on the lawn with his mom being dead, and who he knows is his dad, because he knew that his dad is missing and was doing some kind of experiment. And then see, he doesn't have any, he's like, somebody help me, but he's on this like large estate, so there's no one to help him. Then we see like the police talking to Peter and Aunt May, and they say, I guess Peter overhears on the radio as they're telling him exactly what happened, that there's another robbery happening. They were chasing the suspect, and he went into some warehouse, and now he's in there, and they're going to get him. And they think it might be the same guy that robbed those two old people, or killed the one old guy. So Peter gets his costume. He goes over there to kick some ass. He confronts the gunman, and he does punch him a couple times, but he doesn't kill him, which is good. But that's when he sees the guy's face, and he's like, oh my God, you're the man I could have stopped. If only.
If only. I know, and that's so sad that like it's the way always has to happen or whatever. But this was a weird one, because it was like indirectly both times that it happened. Like it wasn't like him not getting paid or something, him getting back. It was just some random guy in the street, and then like
I took it like he's a kid and he's not a superhero yet, so why would he think that it's his responsibility to stop some guy right away? I could see it like if he'd been doing it for a while, like the superheroing, that it would be weird if he didn't stop him. But like this is like day 5 or something, so like or maybe at most 2 weeks, and he's not superheroing at all. He's just wrestling. So it's kind of like, he wouldn't necessarily think right away, oh, I'm going to be able to stop this guy, or why would I care? It's just a purse thief or something, So he's not killing anybody. Let the police take care of it. And and then indirectly, just randomly, he happened to pick Peter's house to rob next. So it's less connected to him being a shitty person or something. There's still a little bit of like, oh, you should have done something, but it's not the same as him being like, well, sucks to be you, wrestler guy. For stiffing me, you get to get robbed. Fuck you. Like, it's less of that, which I thought was a good call.
No, I agree too. I think again, it was like, oh wow, like that was different. So
yeah. And then so the police are outside of this warehouse, and Peter doesn't even think about killing him or anything, which is good for him. But he throws the guy out the window tied up, and now the police see him, and then the police actually see Spider-Man leave the window, and they're like, what the hell is that? And so this is first time help, I guess, fighting crime, being with the police, or like leaving bad guys for the police. And then he remembers he remembers the with great power comes great responsibility talk that he had with Uncle Ben earlier, and he's the one who thinks with great power comes great responsibility. He's the one who says those words in succession, like in his mind. And so he decides to start helping people around the city. He's helping ladies getting mugged and people dying in a fire. He pulls them out of it and things like that. So he's their friendly neighborhood Spider-Man now. And I thought this was actually a really compelling scene, the next scene that happens, where Peter's walking home. It's still like the same week that everything happened with Uncle Ben, and she's like, oh my God, how are you doing? Or Mary Jane sees him and says, oh my God, how are you doing? I came by to say hi. And he's like, oh my God, like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel at the moment. And then he just like falls at her feet and starts crying. I was like, oh, that's a really good, like, emotional beat in the comic.
Yeah.
And then we get the introduction of J. Jonah Jameson. Now that Spider-Man has been doing stuff around town, helping people, J. Jonah Jameson, of course, is the head publisher or whatever?
Yeah, he's the
chief,
yeah.
whatever the
What
fuck
is
they
that?
call him,
Oh, why can't I think about what that's called?
the chief news guy, whatever the hell.
Yeah.
The publisher, I guess. I don't know. He's the head guy of the Daily Bugle, and he's like, he's showing that all the other newspapers are writing about the Spider-Man fellow, and the Daily Bugle dropped the ball because they wrote about the Osborne house burning. So, and he's like, we need to focus on this Spider-Man guy. You know, I want to know everything about him. So this is the beginning of that. And then at the same time, we see Parker. I don't know. I was wondering, did you think that this was because of the bite as well? But Parker solves the equation that he's been working on from his dad with the like chemical makeup of this polymer stuff. And that is what his web shooters shoot out, this weird polymer that his dad invented. Did you think that was because he got smarter from getting bit?
I don't know. That's one of those things. Like Peter's always kind of been a brainiac, right? And like he was working on this,
Right, but he was stuck for so long, and then
Yeah.
magically he gets bit by a spider, and like a week later he's like, I figured it out.
I mean, I would assume so. I mean, assume that it's, helps him with his brain power as well as his physical power.
Yeah. And they do make a big deal about this stuff. They're like, like he shoots it at the ceiling and he's like, look, it sticks like super glue on the end of it, but the sides are like just tacky so I can climb it and get a good grip. Like they make sure to explain exactly how these webs work, which I thought was kind of funny. Like, do you really need to go into that much detail about it? Like, we get it. They're sticky webs. We're just going to go with it. Like, it was never a problem in the original Spider-Man stuff. We never needed to understand exactly how they worked.
No, we need to explain it.
Yeah. So I just thought that was interesting. So he solved this problem, which, there's like probably the last thing, right? That's the last thing he needed to really become Spider-Man is his web shooters.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's got his costume and now he's got the web shooters. And I think he even adds the design to his costume the next time we see it. So, so he goes, he's figured that out. He goes back to school now. It's been a little while between Uncle Ben's death. So people at school are like, oh my God, you're back. Are you okay? And then while he's in the halls, all of a sudden there's a big explosion and it turns out Green Goblin is attacking the school and Harry knows what's going on. He's like, oh my God, he's after me. My dad's after me. He says it under his breath, but he's like, I know what's happening. And then Spider-Man comes out of nowhere and is like, I'll figure it out. Don't worry. Superhero coming through. So he runs back into the school, starts helping people. And then they do this whole montage because they need to explain to us. I didn't need this explanation, but I think they're trying to make it as realistic as possible, or like understandable as possible. But like they show 2 minutes later or 2 minutes earlier, and it was like Peter Parker in the explosion in the hallway. And then he's like, oh, I got to change and I got to do it out of sight. So he goes into the bathroom and he changes into his costume, which is under his clothes. And then he's got to run out of the school to do it because he's like, wait, I can't come out of Spider-Man out of the bathroom. So he actually has to run out of the school, change into the woods, then swing back into the school through all the crowd of kids like he was not in school prior. So they make a big thing about that. Like 4 pages is dedicated to how he did this, which I thought was kind of silly, like not needed, but whatever. They're trying to, just like with the webbing, they're trying to like give it a real life explanation of how this works. And so when he comes back in the school, we see a guy dressed in purple robes and shit that are covering his face. And when it's revealed that it is the Green Goblin, this is the new version of Green Goblin. He is actually like a mutated giant man. They say he's 7 feet tall in the indicia in this comic. So like in the original drawings of him, it says 7 feet tall. So he's not really human size, or he's like superhuman sized, we'll say. And then he's super bulky. He's got like kind of spiky elbows and stuff. But his body is like flesh colored, but his face is completely green. He's got green glowing eyes, and he has like horns and shit coming out of his face. So yeah, this is the new design. John, what did you think of this new design?
Yeah, so this is the only thing in the comic that and it's not like a complaint per se. It's just like, I guess I just love the Green Goblin and like most of the iterations. I like the iterations of him like being a creepy guy in a mask. And like I get it, like turning into a monster, like that totally makes sense. Like I'm not knocking that at all. I think that is a great idea and a way to take him. I don't know. I wasn't like he's very hulky, and I mean I like that he's got a purple cloak.
Yeah, green and purple, pretty standard colors, right?
And maybe that was part of it too. Maybe it's because just his head is green, and maybe like his whole body didn't turn green. Maybe that would have sold it for me a little more.
I think they did that because they didn't want him to be confused with the Hulk.
I guess that makes sense too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you just use a different color.
What, red?
Or a different color green. Pardon me.
Yeah, but Hulk isn't always the same green. He's gray and different shades of green. He's red.
Then he always has to have a purple cloak.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There you go.
I don't know. He just I like I like that he's got claws. I thought that was kind of cool.
He just didn't do it for you, is what you're saying.
No, I just I didn't. It wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't my favorite of the designs.
Yeah,
I'm not, like I said, I'm not as fan of the big bulky Green Goblin. I don't know.
I think you're crazy because I actually liked this design more than most of the other designs. So I was like, yeah, this is what a mutated. If you mutated the genome of someone without like, the fluke with Peter was that he just got like spider powers, but if you did that experiment 100 more times, it would be like, oh man, we turned this person inside out on accident. Like, like I feel like there would be more different mutations happening than just, I got all the good stuff from a spider. Like there's no bad stuff either. It's not like he's laying eggs or some shit either. So like, or like the webs come out of his ass or something,
I'm waiting for that version of Spider-Man.
Yeah, where's this realistic Spider-Man when the webs just naturally come out of his ass? A different hole than his butthole, but it's still on his butt.
He's got a web hole down there.
Yeah, somewhere down there. So yeah, like I actually really did like this design. I thought it was a very good, like, if you're gonna change it, right? Like make it completely different than anything before it. Because all the times before, it's just a dude in a costume. It's a white guy in a costume. So this was like completely different, right? Like this is totally changing it. And I mean, like, to me, this is like this would look way better on film than like the William Dafoe in a plastic mask that doesn't move. And he's like, like, I don't know. I never liked that design from the movie. With his face at least. And this,
his Power Rangers.
Yeah, he had a very Power Rangers vibe. And because the face didn't move at all, it's kind of like, it's like, it's hard. You got to be a really, really good actor. Not that William Dafoe isn't, but you got to have like something behind it that really transfers that energy from the actor to the audience. And I just feel like that mask didn't do it.
I'll agree with that. And I think his voice and then him not having the mask later, that really makes it.
Yes.
And then obviously, like, I mean, in the, I assume everybody saw it by now, but the Spider-Man No Way Home, bringing him back and then having him be able to just, really express, like,
Gollum. He does like a straight up Gollum.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. Him being like, "Oh yeah, I'm Norman. I'm just here to help," and then just like the facial expression of him being like, like obviously like have turned. That's amazing. And like, so yeah, you have his face painted green or whatever. Mm-hmm. I could see him being something like this too, like, as far as like someone who's such a amazing character actor like Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see how.
I think it would have been cool if they went this way with the movies because, if just imagine his face being green. Maybe the computer animation would have made it terrible back then. But if you had him like nowadays with the computer animation we have now, and his skin was green, and then he had like the horns and shit, and he's still doing that emotive face stuff, it would look pretty fucking cool. I think.
I agree, and I will say one little quick caveat. There is a lot of stuff that you can look up, and I'll send you a photo of it because I don't know if you've seen it. When that first Spider-Man was coming out, they actually toyed with like a more prosthetic thing because of how much Willem Dafoe's face is expressive. And in some of the behind the scenes where they have it like on animatronic to show like how it would move and stuff, it looked really freaking cool. And I don't know why they didn't do it. I don't know.
It probably was a filming issue. Like if we do this, it's kind of like the Jaws shark or something, I would think. Like it's going to work okay, but like it needs to work seamlessly 100% of the time, and maybe they couldn't get it to work 100% of the time because there's a lot of day shots just straight on him, right? Like he needs to be able to move that thing all the time perfectly. So, yeah, but I could see that though, and it could be budget too. But those movies, I guess the first one probably didn't have the biggest budget. The second one did, obviously, because the first one made all the money. So, yeah. So while Peter's fighting Green Goblin, he's holding his own. Like neither of them are fighters, right? They just have strength and stuff, so they're fighting each other like they know how to, or the best they could do. But Green Goblin is saying like Parker, like he knows without a doubt that this Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And Peter Parker's like, how the fuck do you know my name? Because Parker doesn't know who this is. I mean, he barely heard over the radio and TV that, something happened to Harry. And that was like the only thing he heard about it. Nothing about like what happened to the dad or, that he could nothing that would make him put those pieces together. So, yeah. So yeah. And this is where we see the web shooters come into play in this fight. Like he does his first like big web thing where he makes like basically a trampoline out of the webs as he gets thrown, and he makes a trampoline and then he's able to bounce back up and, fun stuff for Spider-Man. And he also starts his quipping. We get the Spider-Man quip. So it's like with his newfound cool personality and like confidence, he gets more quippy. He was never quippy in the earlier issues though. Or if he did, it was like, it was a little bit under his breath. There was never like full quips.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was under his breath. He said something a couple times when he's wrestling, and he said something the first time that the
when he's wrestling is different because he's got his powers. I'm talking about like before he gets his powers, or maybe right as he gets them, he's not quippy at all. Then when he starts wrestling, he starts having fun with it. He's getting more confidence. He gets a little bit quippy. Then now he's full powered. He's confident in himself, and he is quipping like a motherfucker. So yeah, that's like the whole thing that happened. There's just a big fight. This last issue was just a big fight between Green Goblin and Peter Parker, and the police show up, and they don't know who's bad or good, and they're trying to, figure that out as the two fight on one of the bridges. I don't know if it's the Brooklyn Bridge or one of the bridges, but yeah, like the police show up, they start shooting at people. They actually shoot the Green Goblin a couple times with like, I don't know, an assault rifle, I guess. But it doesn't stop him. He is able to either work past the pain. It does show the bullets like going through him though. Like there's a silhouette. I think this is because they couldn't really show blood. Because this was still like when Marvel had like comics for kids. This is like the silhouette, and you see bullets going in his back and bullets coming out of his back, and there's like blood spatter as it comes out of him. So, or bullets going out of his chest, I should say, and the blood splatter that's with them. So that's like he did get shot, but it looks like he's not bleeding after that. So maybe he just heals immediately or something.
He definitely affects him, but he's able to like get past it pretty quick. So.
Yeah, but then he jumps for Peter, and Peter dodges him, and then Green Goblin falls in the water and drowns? ?
I don't know if he just falls, and because it's such a high fall, maybe he's like
knocked
swept
out
up in the current or knocked out. But yeah, it kind of shows his hand go up and then fall down into the water, and you're like,
Maybe he can't swim as Green Goblin, like he doesn't know how to swim. I don't know.
That's his weakness, yeah.
Yeah, water.
Oh, water.
But immediately after he falls in, the cops are like, freeze to Spider-Man, because they don't know if he's good or bad. And he's like, what? And so they start shooting at him, and he disappears from them. And then Peter has to go back to the school and pretend like he goes back in, puts himself under a chalkboard to get rescued in this burning building that's had the fires put out now, but like they're doing a search and rescue. And he gets found under a chalkboard, and they pull him out, and Mary Jane's like, oh my God, you're okay. And then Harry says like, it was my father. So Harry knows it was his dad. He tells everybody it was my dad. I saw him down there, and no, the police don't believe him. They're like, well, you're crazy. Like, why would your dad do that? And then the last page of this is we cut to the bridge where the police are still flying around looking for Green Goblin in the water, I assume. And we don't see anything except a couple air bubbles coming out, like floating up to the top. So obviously he's still alive, but that is how volume 1 of Ultimate Spider-Man ends. John, what'd you think and what would you give it?
So I liked it overall. It was a build-up for sure. Like he has, a couple of little like one pages of like doing the wrestling stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, you don't get him as Spider-Man until this final fight with Green Goblin.
Officially, I mean, he's got the web shooters and the spider drawings on his suit in this last 2 issues.
Yeah.
Once Green Goblin attacks a school.
Yeah, but you don't have like him like really practicing like being Spider-Man.
That's
like,
good though, right? Like we've already seen that in the movie 1,000 times. So
yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. Like, so it was different enough, and I like that we saw a lot of like him dealing with his day to day, of figuring out how to balance like his new stuff and still be a kid, and like how some things worked out real well for him. Actually like him, and this was kind of neat of him becoming more popular and like joining back. Like that's kind of a different side that we've not really seen before. Usually it's like he's still an outcast and like whatever, but like he doesn't like necessarily like
he doesn't show off his powers. Like he doesn't enjoy them at school, and this was nice that he did.
Yeah, like you said, when you said Teen Wolf, that's exactly where my mind went. I was like, yeah, it's totally like oh well, I'm gonna show off like I'm not the freak now. I'm like the cool guy who can like do cool stuff. And I like that. I thought it was different. And I like that, he was still you could tell, obviously, the sad about Uncle Ben having to die, of course, and like that's part of the tragedy of Spider-Man.
Yes.
But like still seeing that he's like a good kid deep down, like even when the girls were like hitting on him, he was like, like I appreciate it when I like.
Yeah, the power didn't corrupt him, right? Like,
yeah, he still obviously does have a thing for Mary Jane. They hint at it a little bit, and then because at the party, I think one of the girls, when she's like bending over him, Mary Jane walks in, and he's like, "Oh, Mary Jane."
Yeah, he obviously cares about her when he sees her running out.
Yeah, so like I don't know, they did a good job, I think, of really balancing like and showing that kind of like duality of him having to live like that. Which we get a lot for a lot of characters like Batman. But I think they did a really good job in this with Spider-Man. So I really enjoyed it. The art was fantastic. The only thing in the art that I did not like was I wasn't, like I said, or not that I didn't like it, I just wasn't a huge fan of this interpretation of Green Goblin overall. I liked some of it, and some of the panels were cool. Like because there was one that totally looked like when it was a close up on his face, it just looked like some of the classic panels.
Yeah.
Or even the Green Goblin face on the what is the Stephen King truck?
Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah. I was trying to remember what that was.
Yes.
So, but yeah, so like there are parts of it that were cool. But yeah, I don't know. It like I get it was different take, and I like that. I would definitely like to see where it goes. But like I wasn't sold on the design like out of the box on this one.
Right.
But overall, I enjoyed it enough. Like I wouldn't be like, fuck this Spider-Man. Like I enjoyed it still.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say overall, I would give this one a 7.
Okay. Well, John, you're going to be very shocked because I liked this book a lot. I'm actually more shocked than you are probably, because I was reading it. I'm like, I am fully like smile on my face, enjoying the Spider-Man book. And that is so weird to me. Because most of the time I don't care about the character. I don't know. Something about him just doesn't connect with me. But the way they wrote him in this did. The way Brian Michael Bendis was able to make him like likable with his powers. And like you said, he gets to actually have fun as a kid with these powers, in high school, like you said, Teen Wolf style. But it doesn't change him. Like he's not like a bad guy or like a dick or something, which he kind of gets into that territory a little bit in the Raimi movie when he says like, oh, it's not my problem, when the guy's like running out with the money. And so, yeah, like, he was more sympathetic in this, I think, because when the guy robs his family, it's not really his fault. Like, how the fuck was he supposed to know that like that guy was going to do that. And also he hadn't been, I mean, they never set him up to be like a hero yet or anything in these issues. So yeah, I get why he wouldn't necessarily do that. And he had a lot on his mind at the same time too. So yeah, maybe he wouldn't have tripped the guy or whatever. And who's to say that that would have done anything either? Like, what if he tripped the guy pulls the gun out and shoots the 2 bodega people behind him?
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot of things that could have happened that, you know, it's not necessarily his fault in this. And it's also random that that guy picks Uncle Ben and Aunt May's house to rob, you know? Like it wasn't like Uncle Ben was going to pick him up on the corner right behind where this guy was running, and that's why he gets shot. That's what happens in, you know, the Sam Raimi movie, basically, right? Like he's going to the wrestling place to pick him up, and then that guy shoots him trying to steal the car. So like, yeah, I feel like this was less, he was less of a dick and just had more fun as a kid, as a teenager. And also probably because I grew up at I was in high school at the same time he was in high school in this. So there was probably a lot of like, yeah, I remember that. I remember Jinko jeans. Man, look at all those Stussies on those notebooks. But yeah, like, I don't know. It was really fun, and I actually want to continue reading it. I'm probably gonna at least check out the next trade, if not more. I want to see what happens with Doc Ock, and I want to see what happens with Green Goblin, and all those little kind of things they set up. So, I'm gonna give this one an 8. I really liked this, surprisingly. I did not expect to. I liked it more than Ultimate X-Men, which is saying something, because I like Mark Miller, and I like X-Men a lot more than Spider-Man. So I liked this more than that. Not that that was bad. It was fine. And then I think Ultimates is still the best one so far. But we're coming up on our last one, which is what we're going to read the beginning of next month in August. We're going to read the Ultimate Fantastic Four, which I have read, you have read, but I haven't read it for like 20 years. So we'll see how that one holds up.
That's true. Because I loved it so much. Like I had I think the entire run.
Yeah, I loved this. And I mean, that's where Marvel Zombies came from. Like the whole little crossover there. Very, very cool. I liked the run a lot. That one's written by Warren Ellis too, so it has a bit of a different feel than Bendis or Mark Miller. And so I'm excited to dig into that. But that'll be our final Ultimate book, at least for a while. I know there's like a couple more we could probably read or check out. But these were like the 4 big ones that were the main headliners of that whole thing, of that whole line. So, yeah, we're gonna read that, and then for our patron voted second episode of this month, we are doing something because John always wants to have themes for for our stuff.
Shut up.
And you know, July is a very special month. Always, it is Shark Week month or Shark Month. I don't know what the fuck they call it, but it's the month that Shark Week is in. That's what it is. So, like last year where we did Hookjaw. Was it last year or the year before? I don't know. One of these years we did Hookjaw, which was a shark comic from Britain. We are going to do another shark theme episode, and the poll is going to have a couple of King Shark storylines, because there's not many. The problem is there's not a lot of shark things, so we have 2 shark or 2 King Shark titles, and then we have this. This is a European title called Cathargo, which I've never read, or I read the first volume a while ago, but it's European, so it's a lot slower than American comics, a little bit different style. So we'll probably read volume 2, because I'm assuming that's where the shark stuff really happens. So, but yeah, so we'll put that poll up, and our patrons will vote in that poll. And speaking of patrons, we'd like to thank our patrons, Hoku, Otaku Mike, Christian, Matthew, Kyla, and Sandy. You guys are awesome. You're the best. We love you. And you guys get to vote once a month on what we do for the second podcast of each month. So enjoy voting on those. John will put that poll up Monday?
Yep. And if you want to be a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word. Patrons not only get to vote for our second podcast of the month, they also get an exclusive podcast. That's right, a podcast extra episode just for patrons. Sometimes we let them pick. Sometimes we will done series. It's a lot of fun. Definitely check it out. There are additional bonuses for becoming a patron, so we appreciate you.
Yeah, and this month our Patreon exclusive episode is we're going back into the well of Neil Gaiman and Colleen Doran, who is they're the team that brought us Snow Glass Apples that we did for Christmas time. And they did another book called Chivalry. So we're going to be reading Chivalry for this month's Patreon exclusive episode. So look forward to that if you are a Patreon or a patron, or if you would like to join Patreon to listen to that and all the past episodes we've done that are exclusive episodes. And with that, I think
with that, I have one more thing because I just wanted to say, because you said that you're not a big Spider-Man. I had to double check, and I look back at all of the Spider-Man titles we've done, and you have enjoyed every single one. So I think it's time to stop saying.
Okay, how many Spider-Man episodes have we done?
I do. You got Spider-Man Blue, Spider-Man's Tangled Web, Spider-Man Sinister Six, Spider-Man Kraven's Last Hunt.
Okay, those don't count because those are written by really, really good writer-artist teams. Look, I like good Spider-Man. I like good Spider-Man, all right? I don't like your monthly run-of-the-mill Spider-Man shit, all right? That's what I'm talking about. Like, Kraven's Last Hunt is one of the top Spider-Man stories of all time. So, yeah, of course, I'm going to like that. But when it's just, like, a random Spider-Man title, like, yeah, I'm probably not going to like it. If Darwin Cook is writing Spider-Man, or Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale are writing Spider-Man, yes, I will like Spider-Man. But it's got to be one of those level things. I can't just read random Spider-Man and be like, yes, this is great. And I would say Sinister Six, I don't remember what I gave that one. I had more fun, I think, than I thought I was gonna, but that was definitely not something I would pick up on my own and continue reading.
Well, that's unfortunate because it was really good. It reminded me why I love Spider-Man.
Okay.
So, but that's fine. That's fine. Okay. I felt like you should be able to say you're a Spider-Man fan at this point, but
I don't think so. I would never want to pick up that character on my own, though. I only read it for this podcast. So
for shame, Matt's so cold-hearted DC to the core. We can't even Spider-Man. Some of the most sad but happy-go-lucky characters cannot pull him.
No. Because there will never be a Spider-Man title as good as any Vertigo title. There will never be a Sandman there will never be a Spider-Man that's as good as Sandman, Hellblazer, Swamp Thing, any of those titles. So no, I will not acquiesce to your Marvel indoctrination.
Okay, well, fine. I guess with that, I don't have anything else.
Okay, well, then we will see you guys on the next one.
On the next one.
Bye.